Well, this 2015 Ram's giving us another issue. Now, we went out to some food for dinner last night, and on the way there, we started hearing a noise. It sounded like a squeaking, like of the belt or something. First, I thought maybe it was the brakes, but we were driving and the sound went away. Then, it started making a rattling noise, so I was trying to figure out what it was. So, when we got to where we're going, we popped the hood and found this noise, the source of it. I'm going to start the truck here so that you can see what I'm talking about, but I don't want to leave it running very long, so let me pop the hood, get the truck started, and I'll show you what is going on. See what's happening down there? Let me go to the other side, see if you can tell. Well, I didn't want to run it very long, so I shut it off pretty quick after recording that little clip. But hopefully you saw that the water pump pulley was going back and forth inside there. I think the bearing's gone out on the water pump. Also, it sprayed coolant all over the engine compartment, so I've already tried to clean it off, at least do a primary cleaning on it so I could work on it without getting too messy, hopefully. But in this video, I'm going to be changing out the water pump, and I'm going to bring you along for the journey. So to start with, I was just going to go over some of the tools that I am using for this job. You don't have to use the same exact tools, but I'm going to use a pair of channel locks to get some of these hose clamps off, like this one on the upper radiator hose here and the one on the water pump up on the upper radiator hose down there. I've got some extensions, including this really long one, just because that makes the job a little bit easier. Ratchet, socket set, and also a little impact gun. I've got a 5/16 inch bit on there, but I've also got a socket adapter I can use with 3/8 inch sockets if I decide to use that, just to make the job a little bit quicker. So the first thing I'm going to start by doing is getting this hose off so I can get this shroud out of the way, and then we can have better visibility to the water pump so we can see what we're doing at. I'm going to go ahead and time lapse that so you don't have to watch me do the whole thing. Well, I actually had the idea while I was taking that hose clamp off the hose that attaches to the water pump that I'm going to have to take the thermostat housing off anyway. So I'm going to use the extension, get down in here, and a 13mm socket on my ratchet, and we'll just take these two bolts out. I'll break them loose with my ratchet, and then probably switch over and use the impact gun just to get them out the rest of the way real quick and easy. It's a long reach down in there, that's why I'm using this extension. I think this extension is like 14 inches, and I've got another 6-inch extension on it, but it works pretty good. Trying not to drop that bolt. Alright, I was able to get it. I'm going to put that on my mat over here so I don't drop it. Get those out of the way, and I should be able to pull that off. Yep. Just like that. So the next thing I'm going to get out of the way is the shroud. It's got two 13mm bolts holding it in, one on this side right here and one on the opposite side, about the same place. I'm just going to use my impact gun and see if I can get those out real quick. There's one. And it won't reach there, so I'm going to have to use ratchet on this side. Because the fuse box is in the way. I'll show you that. Yeah, so here's the bolt right here. This fuse box is in the way. That's why I couldn't get that out with the impact on this side. So just using my ratchet. It's pretty loose right now, so I'm getting it out here with my hand basically. there's a couple tabs on this. Right here's one of them. Push that tab in and you should be able to pull this up, get it out of the way. One on each side. Do the same thing over here. Pull it up. Alright, now I can get this out of the way. Little disclaimer here on the bottom of this. It has been cut before because I no longer have the clutch fan on my water pump, because I have changed this water pump out before, and at the time I was not able to get the clutch fan off of the water pump assembly. I didn't have the right tools to do it, so I left it off, and the truck's been running fine without it, but I haven't been pulling any heavy loads or anything with it, so it's still got the electric fan on there, and it's been keeping the truck plenty cool, as long as everything is working like the water pump. But like I said, haven't had any issues. If you have your clutch fan on there, you may have to get up under the truck, cut this in order to get this shroud out of the way, or get that clutch fan off of there, which would be a real pain to do with it clutch fan on there, because you'd have to reach around the shroud and try to get some tool in there on the clutch fan, kind of like this. It'd be a very awkward position to try to get it off, but hopefully you can get this off of your truck. And now we've got access so we can see down into the water pump assembly and everything. So we'll get started with the actual removal of the old water pump here in just a minute. So I've got a 16mm socket that I'm going to be using to loosen up the bolt on the tensioner pulley right here. So because we're going to have to take this off and reuse it on the new water pump. This one thing I don't understand, why they would put that on the water pump. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So now, the next thing I want to do is get a breaker bar, a breakover bar, and there's a square in that idler pulley right down here. So you can put the end of the breakover bar, the square piece. It looks like this is a 3/8 inch though, so I'm going to have to use an adapter. Put a square drive in there, and then push it over so you can get the belt off. Alright, I got my breakover bar with a 3/8 to 1/2 inch adapter right here. So I'm going to just get it down in there, push that in that square, and then push this over so we can get the belt off. Next thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and pull that tensioner off of there. Alright, now I got the tensioner off there, so the next thing I want to do is go ahead and pull the rest of these hoses off that are connected to the water pump before we start unbolting it. I think it makes it a little bit easier if you do that first. So we've got a few hoses here. Got this one right here. We're going to have to take that clamp off, this clamp right here, and then also the lower radiator hose has to come off the water pump. And that should be it for the hoses, and then we'll start unbolting the water pump. Alright, so I'm getting ready to unbolt this water pump. I'll probably be in the way for the video, like my arms and stuff, because I don't really have a good way to get down there. Mount my phone to record it, and also it's starting to get a little bit dark out, but I want to show you all the bolts that we have to take off. The first thing we got to do is this bracket right here. We'll have to undo that bolt right there and get it out of the way. So we get that bracket out of the way, and then there's 12 bolts on the water pump that we got to take out. Here's the new one. So we can show you the location of the bolt holes. So you get one here, 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 going all the way around the edge of this. A couple of these you may not be able to see when you're trying to get to them if you're doing it like I am, working from the top of the engine down, but you should be able to feel them and get them all out. And then there's a couple more right here. So just go all the way around the edge and make sure that you get all the bolts out all the way around. There should be 12 of them all together. Well, now I got the old one off. Took me a little bit to get to some of those, try to find them where they were located. But I got all 12 bolts out. Unfortunately, I dropped 2 of them, so I'm going to have to look under the truck, see if I can find those 2 that I dropped. And now I need to, before I put the new one on, clean up the surface here. You can kind of see it's got some RTV gasket material where the old water pump used to sit. But this is what your engine looks like without a water pump on it. Alright, it's the next day. We got the old water pump off. So today we got to put the new one on. But first, that surface is pretty dirty. I'm not sure if you can tell. It's got some grit and grime stuff all over the surface there. So I'm going to try to clean that up before putting the new one on. And what I'm going to be doing is just wet sanding with some 320 grit sandpaper. 320 is a pretty fine grit, so it shouldn't mess up the surface or anything. And I'm not really going to put any pressure. I'm just going to try to get the grit and grime, dirt off of there. I'm going to spray that with some water and also soak the sandpaper in some water and do a little bit of wet sanding and try to get that stuff off there. Make a nice smooth surface before we put the new one on. Well, I couldn't find my spray bottle, so I just got a bottle of water. I put a little hole in the cap here. I'm going to see if that works. Spray some water on that. Yeah, it's not the best, but it's doing something. So now I'm just gonna try to keep that wet and scrub it with sandpaper and see if we can get that surface clean. Alright, so this old water pump is pretty bad. You grab that pulley, you can shake it around everywhere. Shouldn't do that. Also, you got to get this temperature sensor out of the old one so we can put it in the new one, and then we'll get the new one installed. So I'm going to go ahead and get this out and install it on the new one. Alright, I got the temperature sensor in the new water pump. Now I'm going to turn it over and get the gasket installed. Now, to install this gasket, it simply just pushes down in there, but they recommend that you put some kind of gasket sealer or silicone grease on this to get it installed. What I'm going to be using is this gray gasket maker, ultra gray, high torque. I did this on the last one and it worked pretty well, so I'm going to put a little bead of it all the way down in this valley all the way around. That'll hold the gasket in place while we put it in the truck. Well, I got that gray gasket maker all the way around the grooves. So next thing is to put the actual gasket in place. And sorry I had to stop recording that. It was easier to do it with 2 hands because that was pretty tough to squeeze that stuff out of the tube. And it may be just because I've got an older tube that I've had for a little while, but it should work pretty well. So I'm going to get this gasket put in place and start pushing it in. Got the gasket in, and that gray gasket maker is going to hold that in place while we get this put in the truck. So now I'm going to take it over to the truck and start bolting it in place. Alright, now we're going to start getting this bolted in place. I like to start with this bolt that's got the nut on it and that holds that bracket, because it's kind of in the center of the water pump and it'll hold it up. So it should be this hole right here. So if we can get this one in place, it should hold it kind of in the right position. Had a couple short bolts on this edge. This one. Then once you get all the bolts in place, then we'll work on torquing them down. And say when you tighten it up, that you should go in a cross pattern. So do one on the top and then one on the bottom, and do it kind of go diagonally if you can. Just like if you're doing a tire rotation, you want to do the star pattern. You want to do a similar pattern on tightening up this water pump. Well, I was trying to look up the torque spec for these bolts. The information that I found shows anywhere between 18 and 30 foot-pounds. So I'm going to start with 15 foot-pounds and torque these down, and then after I torque them at 15, then I'll move up to 20. And if they still feel a little loose, then I may go to 25 foot-pounds and then stop there. Well, I did not forget this bolt, but I had to get a long socket so I can go over the bolt part there and torque this down. The only one I had was a 1/2-inch drive, so I had to get my 1/2-inch bar here. So we're torquing it to 25 foot-pounds. Alright, right there should be it. Now I just got to put this bracket back on. Put this nut here. And this one just has to be tight. Torque spec was for the bolts that hold the water pump to the engine. So, get this tight. And put this bolt in right here. Hold this in place. So the majority of these bolts, I don't know if I mentioned it already, but they're 13 millimeter. Except for the one right here under this bracket, it's a 15 millimeter. Alright, now I want to reconnect the temperature sensor. It just slides down, and then it's got that little red keeper you need to push down in place. And then start putting it back together. Start putting the hoses back on it. But I guess before I put the hoses on, I can go ahead and put that idler assembly on there. Another thing it says in the instructions, once you get it torqued in place, go ahead and spin your water pump by hand. Make sure it spins freely. Make sure you don't hear any rubbing noises or anything like that, and that it does spin freely, which this one appears to be pretty good. Well guys, I gotta say I messed up. Not really anything bad, but whenever you're changing out the water pump, you probably should change out the thermostat too. So, you got the old thermostat right here. I need to take that out. I need to go get a new thermostat, and then I'll be right back so we can try to finish this install. Here's the new thermostat, and that's the old one. I'm not sure how much you'll be able to tell on the camera here, but this O-ring gasket that surrounds it on the new one looks like it's a lot thicker than the old one. That old one's been squished. It's been in there for quite a while, probably since last time I changed the water pump, but this one looks pretty good. Now these are directional, so when you put them in the truck you gotta make sure you put them in the right direction. It's pretty simple though. I'll go over here. It just sits down in there. Like that. Get it in there, and I just push around on all sides, just make sure it's kind of flush. And it looks like it's sealed up pretty well. So now you got to clean this up a little bit, and then we'll bolt that back in place. So when it comes to putting this back together, I like to start on the bottom. So we'll hook up that lower radiator hose first, and then we'll go to these two smaller hoses, hook them up where they go, and then we'll put the upper radiator hose on there and get it connected. Now I got all the hoses connected to the new water pump. So the next thing I want to do is put this fan shroud back in and get it in place so that we can mount the upper radiator hose to the actual radiator. So I got the hose out of the way. I want to go ahead and take this off of the water pump. This was just on there to protect the threads, so I'm taking that off so it doesn't fly into the belt or something once the engine is running. So now I'm going to get the shroud, put it in place, and bolt that in place, and then we'll get that hose hooked up. Alright, full transparency, this is where I messed up. I shouldn't have put the shroud in yet. I'm going to take it back off because I forgot to put that belt tensioner back on. So let's take this off, get the belt tensioner put back on, and then put the belt on before we put this shroud in place. Just going to make it a lot easier with this out of the way in order to do that. So, just trying to be upfront and honest with you guys. Mistakes that are made. I hope I'm the only one that does this, but you got this video, at least you can learn from my mistakes, and hopefully you won't make this mistake if you watch this video. Try to make it as easy on yourself as possible whenever you're doing mechanic work. There's some things that sometimes you just overlook, and you got to go back and fix something. That's just part of life and part of the way mechanics works. So nothing wrong with it. I heard a saying once. It said, I thought it was pretty good. It said, "It's not wrong until the customer receives it and it's wrong." I think that's a pretty good philosophy to live by in cases like this. Customer in this case is myself, so it doesn't really matter. So I'm doing my own work, but we'll just get this shroud back out of the way and get that belt tensioner fully put on, and then after that put the belt on and then put this back in place. Alright, now that we've got this installed, verify that all of our clamps are in place. Looks like everything's good down there. You got the clamp on the upper radiator hose here. Just try to see it from the other side. The belt's on, tensioner's on, everything should be good to go. Now that we verified everything should be good to go, we'll go ahead and fill this up. We're going to fill it actually through the radiator cap. You got to press down and twist it to turn this, and then it'll stop. Press down again and turn it again. And it should come up off there. Alright, that was more difficult one-handed than it should have been, but once you press down and turn it twice, it should line up these tabs. It should line up these tabs, and then you can pull it right off of there. We're going to fill up the radiator first, and then if we need to, we'll add some to the reservoir. So what I'm using for this is just a 50-50 pre-diluted mix. It's a universal antifreeze and coolant. I got 2 gallons of it, and if that's not enough, we'll get some more before we start this truck up. But usually 2 gallons is good enough for this, as long as I don't spill too much of it. make sure when you're doing this that you just pour it slowly, allow it to fill up all the cavities in the radiator, and it'll fill up that upper radiator hose, and then you should be able to see if you have any leaks or not once you get the system full. Well, I was wrong. 2 gallons was not enough, so I'm gonna have to go get another gallon or two so we can finish filling this system up. Alright, I'm back. We've got 2 more gallons, so let's see if this is enough. Finish filling up the radiator and our engine block with coolant. It's at the top of the radiator. It's going to be filling up this hose right here. You kind of squeeze the upper radiator hose until you get some of that fluid in there, and that'll help draw it in. Yeah, you can hear it. Once it gets full, it should feel pretty solid. Right now it feels pretty empty. Or you can just be patient and you can let the air bubble out of it here at the radiator cap until it's full. I think we're almost there. Have to get into the 4th one now. And the reason I'm squeezing it is just to get all the air out of the hose and make sure that it's just full of fluid. Alright, that's pretty full level, sitting right about here. just underneath this hose, so I'm going to stop there, put the radiator cap back on. Then we're going to check our reservoir and fill it up as well. Got that full, got the radiator full. Next thing to do is start the truck and check for leaks. Alright, now what I want to do is go ahead and take the truck for a drive, let it get up to operating temperature, then we'll come back and check for leaks again, make sure everything looks good, and then we'll let it sit for a little bit and check the fluid levels again, and then we should be done with this one. Faithful passenger right here. Loves going for rides on the truck. Hopefully we don't see anything. We shouldn't. So far it's looking pretty good. Don't see anything dripping anywhere from the hoses or seeping out in the cracks. See, creeping out from the seams. Looking pretty good so far. Back under it, just make sure. So as you can see right there, the temperature is up almost to the middle. It should stay right about there because I put a 180 degree thermostat in it. They've got three options at O'Reilly's: 180, 192, and a 203 degree. So if you would have got the 192 or the 203, you'd expect that needle to be a little bit higher than where it is right there. It'd be either right on that line or just barely above the line in the center of that gauge. But this is looking really good. I'm not seeing any leaks, so we're gonna go ahead and shut the truck off, and then we'll wait a little bit and check the fluid levels again just to make sure everything's still good. Yeah, so that's the fun part about driving a truck, get it up to temperature so you can check for leaks, is that you gotta wait for it to cool off again before you can check the fluid levels. or else you'll get burnt. So we don't want that to happen. So we're going to wait a while, and then we'll verify the levels in the radiator. Well, it looks like I need to put just a little bit more coolant in there, top it off, and then we should be good to go. Didn't take very much, and levels up here at the overflow tube level. Got a couple bubbles still coming out, so wait till it stops bubbling, and then cap it off, and it should be done. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this video. We got the water pump changed out, the levels are good, it's not leaking. So if you enjoyed this video, please give me a like. Comment below what you would like to see future videos in the future. We got more coming out all the time. I try to produce one every week, or at least once every 2 weeks, if I can get the time to edit it. Between my day job and doing this, it takes a lot of time. So you just support me by hitting the like, comment below, subscribe if you haven't already. I appreciate it. Thanks for your time and watching my videos. I hope you have a good day. If you want some sweet key tags like these, you can go over to www.ownbosssupplyco.com and order a set. I got a set of 4 of these key tags. They're not too expensive, they're pretty good quality. You got the flag on one side and some different sayings on the other side. If that's something you're interested in, you could also get entered to win a truck, trailer, and a piece of equipment so you can start your own business. ownbosssupplyco.com, and if you enter the code James98289 at checkout, you can get 10% off your order.